Good morning, listener. Welcome to another exciting edition of your favorite program, Electoral Reform Hour, on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Last week on the program, we had an enlightening conversation with Hamzat Lawal, the founder and chief executive of Connected Development Code, where we discussed the importance of electoral accountability in Nigeria and how it helps to ensure integrity in our elections. Today, we shift focus to the need for ideological driven political parties. We will explore how a strong ideological foundation can enhance our democratic process and the role these parties play in fostering accountability and transparency. My name is Ezanwan Wagu, your anchor. Electoral Reform Hour is a program aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reforms and constitutional amendment. We seek to enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reform and possibly compile and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and ANEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Ideologically driven political parties are essential for building a stable and vibrant democracy. When parties are founded on clear, consistent principles, they provide a reliable framework for governance, enabling voters to make informed choices about the future of their country. Such parties go beyond individual ambitions or political expediency. They focus on long-term national goals, advocating policies that align with the shared values of their supporters. This helps to create a more engaged, politically conscious electorate, fostering accountability and trust in the democratic process. For Nigeria's democracy to reach its full potential, political parties must prioritize ideology over personality. A strong ideological foundation strengthens political institutions, ensuring leaders remain committed to their guiding principles even after elections. This not only promotes transparency and continuity in governance, but also empowers citizens to align with parties that truly reflect their vision for national progress. With ideological-driven parties in the helm, Nigeria can achieve meaningful reforms and lasting development needed to elevate its democracy to new heights. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome Professor Adele Jinadu to the program. Today, Professor Adele Jinadu was former National Commissioner for the National Electoral Commission, NEC, and currently serves as the Chairperson of the Election Analysis Center of the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Over the years, he has contributed significantly to developing electoral systems in Nigeria, including his role as chair of INEC's 2011 Registration and Election Review Committee. Prof has served as a president of the Nigerian Political Science Association and a member of various election observation missions. Prof, this is so much an very abridged profile of the contributions, immense contributions that you've done, not just in Nigeria but in Africa, and to know that we are privileged to have a leading world political scientist in our studio this morning is extremely gratifying. Thank you for joining us, Prof. Welcome, sir.
You know, when you say too much about somebody,
yes, sir,
people start wondering whether it's not just and I'm just putting some sweet over it.
No.
But I think I appreciate what you have said, but it is still, compared to what many others have done, it is very, very modest. But let me also say that when you invited me to come here, it was a call to duty that I could not say, no, I'm not coming for it. because you and your colleagues in PACA and in some part of the civil society, you are the face of the future of Nigeria. And I want to say publicly, as I've also told you privately, that when I see what you and your colleagues are doing, my faith in Nigeria is undiminished.
Well, my head is swelling now, but
okay, but so
let's cut the chase.
Yes, so let's just put it. Let me put it that way.
Let's cut the chase.
Thank you for the invitation.
No, yes. I'm humbled, yes. and I can tell you for free that today is one of the most important days in this program. So we have run a multi-party democracy, and apparently the downside of this is the lack of ideology, and I know that you've written extensively around this. What could be the hurdle? What could be the challenge? Why this is so?
In political theory, there is this talk about the end of ideology, that the Western liberal society, that after that there is no more debate, and that all of us should so that is also an ideological position, that we don't want ideological division, and that the task of government is a technical one to put into place this liberal democratic society. But of course we know that since Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in the UK and Reagan in the US, even the Western society has come back, and ideological politics has become very, very important between the left and the right, between the left and the right and the center, and that politics is going on. But what has happened in our own case, I will tell you, are two things. One is that we have turned the national question, which is about the role of the state in society, whether the state should be the driver of development or the private sector should be the driver of development. We have turned that into a national question, into an ethnic question. So our politics is ethnic based. And once it is ethnic based, ideology, so-called, in terms of the role of the state, becomes simply the state must pursue ethnic interests, and all of us must have an hand in that. I think that is, and it's a pity, because that is not what Chapter 2 of our Constitution is about. Chapter 2 of our Constitution is about how do you build a society in which justice, equality, fairness operates. Because if you are to enjoy Chapter 2, your fundamental civil and political rights, there must be certain things that should facilitate that. If there is immense poverty in the country, if there is this big divide between the rich and the poor, then the poor cannot enjoy what you prescribe in Chapter 4, which is freedom of expression, freedom of movement. You cannot provide that. So I think, what the political class have been able to do, especially since 1999, is to pose this question as an ethnic question. And then that means over the capture of the state, which ethnic group rules the state. But that is what I call a conspiracy among the political class to depoliticize the question of ideology. The second point I want to make following from that is that, again, the framers of the 1999 Constitution and the earlier one in 79, which puts Chapter 2 there, they know what they are doing. And they now say that, particularly after 99, that every political party in Nigeria must state their position on what has been provided for in Chapter 2, which poses the ideological question: are you working for the common man, or are you trying to maintain these two societies, the society of the filthy rich and the society of the poor? And the role of the state is to provide these services. So none of the political parties so in terms of what the Constitution provides, the political parties are falling short of that provision of the Constitution, that you must put in your manifesto where you stand on the question of Chapter 2.
Prof, isn't it very clear that from 99 that you talked about, and the fact that the person who took over in 1999 as president had a military background and came with that commandist mentality of being in charge, ambushed the political party structures. So do you consider that part of the hurdle that we need to cross?
In fact, that is precisely my point. Because Obasanjo was brought in, what happened was quote unquote anti-Yoruba.
Yes.
So we denied a Yoruba man the presidency. So let us bring
a Yoruba man
to support him. And I think and when that also happened, in terms of registering political parties, then ACN did not meet the qualification, the prescriptions. There had been no party from the Western reflecting the quote unquote the of the Yoruba. So that's what I mean by the national question becomes an ethnic question.
Yeah.
And it is the political parties who produce the president. He has to get their mandate. And what I'm saying is that then you also find the parties fractionalized along ethnic lines. It's a Yoruba man. This rotational concept.
Yes.
So which played out extremely terribly in 2023 during elections with a lot of hate speech. What we are hearing is hate speech, not what each party is going to do. Hate speech. So the concept of Nigeria that is in chapter 2 of a country where you bring the poor and the wealthy together, where you try to narrow divide, regardless of ethnic background, but making sure that no ethnic group, dominates the political scene, it gets lost.
So, what then? The rise of individuals as personality cults in these parties.
Exactly, and that is why also you find even right from the IBB transition program,
yes.
The monetization of politics, the whole idea that politics should be about the people, and that the leaders to emerge should reflect the people at the party level. The party was taken over by money weeks. The primaries that produce Abiola as the candidate and as the candidate. On the convention, you saw how much money was changing hands. And since that time, it has become a money bags. And the most traumatizing aspect of that was the primaries leading to the 2003 elections, where a lot of foreign money was brought in to influence the choice of who be the
presidential candidate.
Yes, against the electoral laws. So the parties have been bought over by so it becomes a lot of who spends the most dollars. A lot of money was brought in from outside the country for the 2023 elections. Money from outside the country.
So where does that leave the manifesto? The Electoral Act is very clear about parties, clarifying their manifestos. And when you put it side by side, the context that you have created about Chapter 2, enhancing Chapter 4.
Yeah.
We look at these parties now. Late Bola Ige did say that all the political parties, it was rumored that one person wrote the manifesto of virtually all those parties. And you look at it today, there is no distinctness in terms of what the different parties, about 19 or thereabout of them today. We don't know in distinct terms what. I know that you can find the AAs, you can find the NCE, the other ones that are prescribed. But in clear terms, what do they represent? And why are they not respecting the dictates of the Electoral Act?
I think it is very, very simple. We have we have laws about political parties, but we don't have political parties in this, even in the sense in which it is they are supposed to be there in the books. These are just, shifting alliances of politicians who can cross from one party to the other, seeking more or less access to the state, regardless of ideological pretensions. So I think that is. I think what we need to do is how do we reclaim the political parties? How do we reclaim the political parties to serve the purpose which they should serve, in terms of aggregating interest and pursuing putting before the public a program of action, not just platitudes, a program of action that state clearly where they stand on Chapter 2, in terms of, are you going to rule for the people, or are you going to simply continue this process where you have people shifting from one party to the other without principles?
So you've posed the question, sir. Yeah. How do we then recapture these parties for the people? What needs to happen for them to become people's parties in the true sense of that word?
That raises a whole big question. Number one, I think we need to find a way of strengthening the guardrails of democracy in the country. And that is why the CSOs, PACA, that's where you come in. And I think PACA and I think the civil society organizations have been talking to the wrong people. Talk to the politicians, try to influence legislation, but also go to the people who are suffering. Go and walk among them and raise their consciousness. Because elections are run and won at the world level. That is because every other vote is aggregated up to the national level. Every Nigerian votes in one polling unit in the various wards in the country.
Yes.
And those are the votes that are counted and aggregated upwards. So I think we need to find a way of how do we make people protect their votes. And in protecting their vote, how do they get involved in politics at the lower level to make sure that the people who are at the party level are people whom they want, and that they have a hand in the choice, which is all the party primaries idea. We started that whole idea of primaries under the IBB regime when I was in charge of political parties. And we now said, what do we need to do to move away from the past? Let us now have membership is at the world level, where we can ensure accountability. And primaries also. You have a system primary where at the lowest level, the people have a say in who their candidate is. It's not just imposed on them. But that whole process has been bastardized, I think, because the regulatory bodies that are supposed to do that have been hampered by the politicians themselves who appoint them.
Absolutely. Do you think there's a gap in our voter education initiatives?
I think there's a serious gap. I think that's a serious gap because it is just, and that is why I like this program.
The reason we chose Radio Nigeria actually is because of its reach.
Yeah, so that's why I like this program, because you are talking to the people at the grassroots level. Many of the CSOs don't, beyond Abuja, Lagos, they hardly go to the, I go around, I don't see CSOs working in the slums, conscientizing people. But this is when you are talking to those who are the problem. And that is why you have this routine of every National Assembly cycle.
Trying to amend the constitution.
So for 4 years, they said they are trying to amend it, and then they towards the end of that session, they now say they pass a law. Then the new one comes, they start all over again because it is a charade. Because they know this is part of the game they play, that things are changing. But the more you look, the less you see. So that's why I think that, yes, let us keep talking to the National Assembly, let's keep talking to the politicians, but let us start talking to our people. And the important thing is, and that is why whatever you may say about liberal democracy, the point they make is that the point they want to make about God is that, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Don't trust the politicians. They will always tell you lies. They will always dissimulate. So read between the lines and hold them to what they say, and make them sure that what they are doing is different from what they are saying. So I think we need to find a way of reaching those people at the grassroots. If you can reach them at the grassroots level, they'll be able to influence what happens at the world level, at the primary level. Because again, the primaries are just a charade. Yeah, charade.
But there is responsibility. You see, Prof, I used to make the argument that civil society has become that head with which coconut will be broken for everybody to eat. There are other. INEC has responsibility, and constitutionally, I'm sure you know that, for voter education.
Yeah. And
so many times in programs like this, people are saying, "Oh, civil society should do this. Civil society should do that," and then sometimes, like, so where is National Orientation Agency? Where is INEC? Where are the political parties themselves? Who are the direct beneficiaries? Why are they absent from the forms? Why are they absent from voter education, the type that you are prescribing?
Look, a number of things. Number one, I agree entirely with you that regulatory bodies are not doing the work they should be doing. But you have to realize that they are working in a particular environment. And I describe that as an environment of diabolic politics, in which politics has been criminalized. So, trying to work in that environment for them creates a lot of problems, particularly for INEC. Okay, for example, there have been cases of politicians, people with party cards being made members of INEC. So why is that still possible today? Even as recently as the appointment of the National Electoral Commission, less than a year ago, everybody
there was a struggle to even.
But the point that, you see, we have gotten to a stage where what I call the politics of rascality. Let them make the noise they can make. Let them make the noise they can make. We'll still do what you want to do. So those guardrails are weak, and we have to find a way of strengthening those guardrails. The second example I want to give, I was surprised at the increasing role which the EFCC and the DSS are playing
in elections.
What do they have to do with elections? They want to prevent vote buying. But the major attempt to steal the votes has been done before election day through procurement. People using procurement to build war chests for elections. Through foreign money that comes in. That is where the EFCC should be looking at. Where do you get the money to run this election?
In fact, a particular candidate publicly had a press conference where he announced that the money he sourced from outside the country, he eventually converted it and donated it to his campaign in breach of
that is his constitution. So what is the EFCC doing about that? You are running after people who are exchanging money, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000. But those who have committed the large larceny,
economic fraud
of one, using procurement process to stack up money for electoral purposes. They've already started now. They've started for 200. They already. Procurement is being used to stack up money as a war chest for election. They are doing that now. Foreign influence is still coming in now in the country. A lot of foreign money is coming in. The private sector is pumping money in because they want to put a government in power who will listen to them and give them access. What is the FCC doing about that? That is where they should be looking.
That's assuming that the EFCC.
So but the question again then goes back to who appoints the EFCC. That's why I'm saying that these are issues that we need to look into. The Wise Commission laid down conditions, even recommendations of how you constitute INEC, and you remove it from the control of the politicians. I will give you another example. When you are appointed a member of INEC, or you are appointed a regional electoral commissioner, your later appointments are used for a period of X year, renewable. But the power of renewal is a power of remove. Is the power of the power of reappointment is also a power of removal. So that is dangling over the head of those who are there, in terms of, look, I don't want to offend the government. I don't want, because I want my appointment to be renewed. You know, so if we need to, but on the other hand, the judiciary has a kind of a cover. Once you are appointed until retirement age, except for cause. But you cannot just be removed because there is no reappointment. But once there is a power of reappointment, it's a power of removal. And we have seen that being done. In the last election, before the last election, there were about so many cases of renewals in INEC. But some of those who have seemed to be difficult to handle were not reappointed.
Yeah. Those with civil society background, about many of them were shoved out.
Yes, and then we are moving to 2027. Next year, about almost half of the, maybe about half of the committee will be due for reappointment. And there's already talk of now, people are not, there will be no reappointment. So when you have that dangling, you see that, and these people are also human beings. And I say, so I think there must be a way, we must find a way of doing this. The other point I want to make, which is important, in some countries, in Sierra Leone, for example, the constitution only provides for the functions and powers of the electoral body. Then the power to make regulations and regulations and proceed. I mean, regulations and so on and so forth is vested in the electoral body, provided that those regulations do not and guidelines do not violate the law of the country. But when every year they have to go every post-election cycle, they have to go to the National Assembly. People who have an interest in the electoral law are the ones making the law. No, INEC is not the one making the law. It's the politicians who are making the law to regulate their own behavior. And each time they say they are making in a way that will strengthen their position. You know, see what happened the last time between the executive branch and the legislative branch and the governors. They were fighting over the electoral law in terms of who are those to attend the primaries. Because the primary is where they ensure
the power, the recruitment process is
so these are people who have a vested interest in making that the law favors them, and all parties have that common interest. But see, just give the power to make laws, the guidelines and the regulations in INEC. So long as they do not obey, they do not violate the constitution, then the legislature should have no hands in passing electoral law from one cycle to the other. We have over-legislated. See between 1999 and now, see how many electoral amendments have been made, how many electoral acts have been passed.
It's the most amended piece of legislation.
And yet we have not improved our electoral process because the ones who make the law are the ones who are violating it, and there are no consequences for them. They refused to pass the thing for commission for on electoral violence since 2008 when we made that recommendation. It has not been passed. So I think what we need to turn our attention is how we can make the people who are at the lowest level of our community life take more active interest in politics without necessarily violating the law. It is their constitutional right to take an interest in politics.
It is still Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of this live program by sharing your comments via the social media platform on X at parker.ng with the hashtag Electoral Reform Hour. And you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via at parker_cap and our WhatsApp number 0816-80-83424. The phone lines will be open shortly. Please don't go anywhere.
Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We'll be back shortly.
Are you ready for change? Join Hearing Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA. This program amplifies electoral reform campaigns and provides citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process. As the National Assembly, INEC, and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be a part of the decision-making process. Remember, democracy is for the people. Let your voice be heard. This message is brought to you with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Are you ready for change? Join Perrin Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA. This program amplify electoral reform campaigns and provide citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process. As a National Assembly, INEC, and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be a part of the decision-making process. Remember, democracy is for the people. Let your voice be heard. This message is brought to you with support from MacArthur Foundation. This is Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Stay with us.
It is still welcome back to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We're still discussing the role of ideological driven political parties in strengthening our democracy. And we have the erudite Professor Adele Jinadu, who is doing an excellent job of shedding light on this important topic. Prof, the political landscape is filled with, money. You alluded to that fact. The 2023 primaries of the dominant political parties were a bazaar in terms of what we saw on live television. But even when we know even the politicians are diminished by their own actions in terms of how the world sees those things. Are there legal, technical, instruments that can be brought to check some of this kind of perfidy that we see, especially money against ideology? Is there something that we can do about that?
Well, the law, the criminal law, for example, the electoral law, and other subsidiary legislation, or whatever you may call it, do provide consequences for violations of these things. But the point I'm making is that the regulatory agencies are weakened in the sense that it is those who appoint their leadership. Controls how much money is given to them to let them pursue their work effectively. Yeah. And therefore, pursuing that regulatory function becomes much more difficult for them. So I think, therefore, what I am suggesting is that there is an important guardrail of democracy where you and I, everybody, we must reach out to our people and tell them vigilance
is the eternal prize of liberty.
And that the example I always give is that we agree that the state has failed us in many respects. They don't provide security, they don't provide water, they don't provide good roads, and you have communities taking this onto their own hands. Responsibility. And the most important one that I want to give is virtually in all parts of the country today, you have gated communities. If the agencies, if the state is providing security, there will be no need for gated communities. And not only do you have them gated, in some places you have local groups dividing themselves into groups
to become vigilantes.
Not just vigilantes, because that vigilante concept has a negative connotation. That they are unlawful, that they are thugs. But these are people who are concerned about their safety at night, in the day. And they now take turns to monitor and protect themselves. Because the state is not there to help them. So if you are protecting your property at night, in the daytime, and you organize yourself this way, then how can you not organize it in a way to protect your vote?
Thank you, Prof. Electoral Reform Hour is a people's program. We want you to call in. You can join now the conversation by calling 09150 910 482, 09150 910 483. I'll repeat again, 09150 910 482, 09150 910 483. You can leave your questions and comments for us on WhatsApp on 0816 8083424 and on X at packer.ng and Facebook at packerpacker. I hope the phones are friendly today. We should be able to get you calling in to be part of this program. Prof, looking at the future of Nigeria's democracy, what long-term electoral reforms do you believe are essential for fostering ideologically driven political parties?
Let me proceed in answering that question by providing a footnote to what I said about Chapter 2.
Yeah.
The usual argument is that Chapter 2 is non-justiciable. But two things. One, there is a section of the provision of the Constitution, I'm not sure now, which says that so long as a legislature of either a state or federal enacts a law to implement some of the provisions of Chapter 2, then it becomes justiciable. So why has that not been done? Why has that not been done? Or why do we keep talking about this non-justiciability when there is also a statement that says that, in fact, you should try and do that, and once you do it, it becomes justiciable? Why? Why is it? Then number two, there are certain international conventions which Nigeria has entered into, which makes some of the provisions in Chapter 2 justiciable in terms of our having ratified them and domesticated them. So that's the point. But beyond all of that, I think we have to find a way, and I don't know how, other than just for us to work. Everybody, not just the CS, every Nigerian has a duty at the all of us live at the world level. There is somebody who does not live at the world level in Nigeria. Yeah. That is where we live.
We actually live in 3 communities.
But at that community level, why have we not done our duty in terms of taking an active interest in what goes on? The politicians have killed local government because we have kept quiet. We live at a local. There's nobody who does not live in a local government or work there. Even if you have residence in other place, but at least you live in it. So why don't you say, look, the local government are not providing the services they should be providing? Make it compulsory. So what I'm saying is that we need more active citizen. And that is not just the job of the regulatory, not just of the political parties, which they are not doing, or some of the regulatory agencies, which they are not capable of doing, given them politics of them. Then we cannot take our own fate in our hands.
Yes, absolutely.
And take an interest the same way.
That's what Packer was established for.
And that's why I'm happy to. That's why I'm happy to come here.
Yes, Packer was established.
Many people were sent to universities abroad by communities when there were no scholarships. When the British were not prepared to train educated people in Nigeria, there are communities. Now that the state has come, we have become independent. Those scholarships, but people are still at the community. They are still pulling their resources together to provide water. If you go to some of the communities in Lagos where the rich people live today, roads are built by the people tax themselves to build roads because you pay the land, money you pay for your land includes providing facilities for you, roads. But the state collects the money, they sell the plot of land, And when people move in, the roads are, so people now tax themselves to build roads. So why can't we do that in terms of taking active interest? There are many people who take interest in who becomes the president of their club at that community level. This character cannot be president of a community hall.
Yeah.
They take an interest in that and vote. So why don't we take an interest in, we know characters who are charlatans, who are running for public office, and we just don't take, we are not just concerned about it.
But is it an elite pastime?
I think no, but you know,
because in the communities they may be not as positively as you have painted.
Yes,
but the communities are actively involved in elections, even to the point where their votes are bought. That is
the point where I'm saying that they refuse buying the votes. I don't believe this concept of take the money but don't buy.
No,
don't take it at all.
That's wickedness.
Don't take it at all. Look, you've been on election mission observer to Ghana.
Yes.
I've seen in Ghana. Have you seen in Ghana the amount of securitization you see?
No.
And when you look at
even though that is coming now, I don't know what has happened to them.
But when you look at the securitization, that is in fact meant to protect, to make sure that rigging happens. They protect cover. The best cover is for you and I to monitor it. And I've gone around some constituencies in Ghana, some polling units, where local people, professionals like you and I, and they protect the vote. They protect the vote.
So let's go back to the question of what can be done to, reshape the political culture and improve governance. I was asking about what are the immediate steps that government or INEC or anybody can begin to reform the political party system and ensure a better evolution of these parties. There is no call. Hello. The number is 091-5091-0482, 0915-0910-483. There is no calling. Okay. Let's move on, Prof.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was talking about what do we do to reshape, whether us, that's civil society, INEC, government, what can we do to create a more reform these political parties, but because they are really the big concern.
Yeah.
In the work that we've been doing in PACA over the period, I've made the argument that I think we over-respect the politicians, and that's not helpful. But what has not, the reason why I sought to have you is considering your vast experience in this. Are there things that we can draw from other places that is helpful to reforming our own political party system?
Yeah. No, I think it's a difficult question you have posed, because things have really gotten back. It becomes cancerous, to use that word. We've been negligent of our duty. So I think moving forward, we now have to think of short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures that we need to take. And I think that is why the type of civil society mobilization that between 1993, when the presidential elections were annulled, facing Abacha, leading to Abdul Salam, leading to the Constitution in 1999, the return to civilian rule, and between the first 3 or 4 years of that period, when we saw where things were going, between 1999 and the time, I want to see that type of mobilization of the civil society movement coming again. And that led to Waste Commission and the recommendation of the Waste Commission. I think we were all caught up in the euphoria of success, and then we went to sleep. And nothing has happened since UWASE. Of the recommendation of UWASE, I don't know of any that has been implemented.
Those that has to do with INEC in the chapters, in all the 9 recommendations for INEC has been.
No, but even the whole question about unbundling INEC, we have not faced it. Yeah. The whole question about professionalizing INEC, we have. Those are the critical. Even the way INEC is appointed, No, nobody has talked about that.
We are going to leave.
But I just want to make one other point.
Okay.
The other point I want to make is that there is nothing unusual about Nigeria in this respect. Many other countries have faced similar problems. And what has saved the situation is that professionals, you and I, the middle class, say enough is enough. We cannot live under this kind of the criminalization of politics, because our own professional ethics dictates otherwise. And the middle class and the professional classes have marched together to conscientize the people. So, but I don't see that happening here. The professional associations are dead. The ones that are active have been co-opted by the state. I don't want to mention names, but the ones that those ones don't even have a public interest orientation. So I think we must find a way of solving the short-term problem, mounting pressure. Let us go back to the Waste Commission and see which ones. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
The wheel.
You know how many commissions have been set up in this country to look into the question of electoral violence?
Justice Lemu.
And then the whole commission of in the middle belt. Recommendations are made, they just state nothing is possible. So we just spend money. The Oputa panel made recommendations.
The 2014 National Conference.
We don't even have that. The Oputa panel, they refused to release the report. It is Father Cook who released, more or less, quote unquote, released his own version of the report.
Let's leave the political parties. You, as former president of NIPSA, the National the Political Science Association, I remember you recommended that we should merge our registration processes, the voter registration thing, and all of that, into a single identification voting card. What could you expatiate on this, and what is the challenges that we might have eliminating PVCs?
Basically, is that you will save money, but the point is, once you have a national identity card that you are a Nigerian, then you can use that to register and vote. So INEC does not have to worry about PVCs, and so it's kind of a talk of INEC and the national NIPSA coming to do this, but a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of politics. People don't want to do it. So that is a problem. But if it can be done, even in some countries, people vote with driver's license. It's enough to show that this is and you show proof that you're a Nigerian. Look, even in Lagos, there is no good record. Go to the registry in the National Population Council. They have registry of births and deaths in Nigeria. Their records are not updated. They are not. We've been conducting census since 1962. Not one census has been successful. So we should look. So if we are turning our attention to INEC.
So where do we get the 200 million? That's 50 million.
Well, estimation, I think.
Okay.
But the point is that no population census in Nigeria has been conducted successfully.
Yeah, because people die without they die in their homes. They are not in
then the politics of it, because it is linked to voting. So there is a whole of politics. I mean, Obasanjo tried to have a population count. It did not work. Buhari tried to do it. It has not. So why? So that will also give you the sort of problem that INEC and this other agencies are facing.
There's been debates about the frequency of, elections. People are saying we should conduct all the elections in one day, and I know that what makes you very rounded in all these conversations around elections is that you've been an administrator and you're an academic. So imagine that together. How do you look at this whole conversation around having all elections in one day? The second is the diaspora conversation about diaspora voting. There are those who are talking about independent candidacy. Because we are going on the home stretch now, I would just want you to take all of that.
No, I think the ultimate that we should try to do is, of course, to have all elections in one day. But the reality on the ground is a problem, because we have not really talked about this. The problem of underdevelopment, the problem of lack of capacity, the problem of the physical structure of the country are also major problems in the conduct and administration of elections. The number of people you need to conduct elections. Nigeria must be the only place in the world where people demand money to conduct elections, to take part in elections. They don't look at it as a civic duty. So the military want money to take part in election. Even the normal problem you have on election day, you've reached an agreement with the National Union of Road and Transport Workers to provide facilities to run elections. Then on that money, they want more money. They now say, the battery has gone down and the driver has not come on time. But what they are really asking, they want more money to go and do what should be a normal duty.
Because the vehicles that are supposed to be deployed, you should have already had them.
Exactly. And INEC does not have all the vehicles. I mean, even you need more ad hoc staff than INEC staff to conduct elections.
Absolutely. You had over 1 million in the last.
But people don't want to do that on a voluntary basis as a civic duty. They want to be paid. The policeman who is deployed to do election duty is part of his normal duty. It should be part of his normal duty, but they want to be paid. And when you give the money to the headquarters, the money does not go down.
Trickle down.
It does not trickle down. And it happens. So I think those are the context. So the debate should go around that why should people not just do election duty for free as part of their civic duty, and they have to be paid for it?
Before we can have a conversation about
if you have done a study of cost of election in Nigeria, more than half of it goes into paying ad hoc staff, into paying all this other stuff, to rent boats from the Navy, to rent planes from the Navy to use in these areas. You know, now you want to lift material from the airport, Abuja, to then the commercial airport airlines.
Some of them, they don't even have the facilities to
carry. They see it as a way of making money. Even the Air Force also sees it as a way of making money. We have to give us this money to move these things before we can start. So those are practical problems. You know, the fact that we are a poor country, and people, again, this sense of civic culture, what is in it for me? I cannot do it voluntarily.
But the challenge at times is that those who call for volunteerism themselves are not volunteering.
So it goes back to that whole cultural thing, you know. So I think
the diaspora.
No, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But again, do we have the facilities for it? Because even in a place like the USA, it's become problematic. The diaspora, the mail-in vote from abroad becomes problem. So we must find a way of, you know, okay. Since the past 3 or 4 days, I've not been able to do any transaction online because the bank said they are upgrading theirs. So for 3-4 days, people cannot access. You go to banking hall, there's no money. You go to the ATM in the banking premises, there's no money there. You want to pay for a ticket at the airport, you cannot be carrying cash, 150,000 naira to come to Abuja. You use your card, they say network problem. So I see these are the issues that we think we should take.
So that the infrastructure deficits, the trust deficits,
exactly,
the whole lack of volunteerism, all compounding the inability to have successful one day
and then
process.
Added to that is that honest people who are doing honest work, when people don't like the result, they start abusing them.
Hello?
Yes. Good morning. Can we know who is calling?
Good morning.
Welcome to Electoral Reform Hour on Radio Nigeria.
Yes, this is Peter Nwachukwu from Gwagwalada. Election on democracy is about the people. government of the people and by the people. The people is the beauty of democracy. But remove money and godfatherism out of politics, then you get it right. It's most lugubrious and unfortunate that this time that we are not doing election but selection. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, Peter.
My name is Peter Wachuku.
Peter, thank you for calling from Gwagwalada.
But can I just intercede?
Yes.
But Mr. Peter, I agree with you 100%. But you also have a role. Make sure that you talk to people. Let them know that the system we have now is wrong, and they should take an interest in political matters, so that we just don't agonize. We also try to organize to change things, and not leave it to those who are there now, who have an interest in maintaining and perpetuating a system that supports them.
Prof, we are on a home stretch right now. Are there key priority reform issues that you think we can adopt? Because they are already in the season of reforms at the National Assembly. Are there any overarching issue that you think needs to share your final thoughts as well?
The broad framework I have is that people must take their own future in their hands. We are at a very, very perilous time now when you and I must say, look, this thing must stop. We have to move forward. I think so that the whole question of eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We really have to drive that into people. It's not easy, and it has to take some time. But in the short term, in terms of electoral reform, I think one, we should go back to the very, very important recommendations in the waste report. And what is also not in the waste, I would say, let's leave the question of regulations and guidelines for elections in the hands of the electoral body. Let them do the regulations and the guidelines, so long as they do not contradict what's in the Constitution. Let's leave it to them. Let the politicians keep up their hands out of it. Let INEC do that. Two, let's find a way of that is in the waste report, a new process of appointing INEC members.
Hello.
Must be found.
Hello. Okay.
Particularly professionalizing INEC, I think it's important.
Very special thanks to our guest, Professor Adele Jinadu, Chairperson, Election Analysis Center for Democracy and Development, for joining us on the program today. To our dear listener, thank you for joining us on the edition of the Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Our engineers today, Onyebuchi Mwawe, and the ICT personnel, Jamila Abdullahi, studio manager Abubakar Yusuf, producers are Ando Hemba Oin and Joy Ubi. Supervisor is Husseina Akila MNI. Facilitating crew Grace Abu and Jeremiah Mpume. My name is Ezenwawagu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Prof. Thank you so much.